Welcome back to MotoGP. After our spring break, the world's most exciting sport races back into action this weekend at the Circuito de Jerez Ángel Nieto for the Spanish Grand Prix, round 4 of 2026. And you join us with the man over our right shoulders, Marco Bezzecchi, in the form of his life. 5 straight victories, 121 consecutive laps led at the front of MotoGP races, dating all the way back to the Portuguese Grand Prix in November last year. But will those 3 weekends, the near month break, have allowed the chasing pack to reset, refocus, and try and put an end to the Bezzecchi train that has been rumbling on for quite some time? Jack Appleyard and Louis Suddaby here to talk you through what's to come this weekend. The Spanish Grand Prix, always special, Lewis, but it feels even more so this weekend. After that unanticipated, slightly longer break than usual, everyone seems to have arrived here with a real energy, a real spring in their step, and there's a real feeling that this weekend is going to be a pivotal one.
Yeah, it has the potential to be something of a reset, doesn't it, this weekend, given the length of break. As you say, this is one of the genuine classics on the MotoGP calendar. Sunday is sold out here. It's going to be one of those atmospheres that are just going to get the hairs on the arms standing up, because it's a bit of an away fixture, this, for Marco Bezzecchi and Aprilia. It's very much Marquez territory we're in here this weekend, both on the track and off it. It feels like Marc Marquez is in a situation in championship terms where he kind of needs the crowd on his side here this weekend to really give him that extra injection of performance. I guess the break that we've had since last Grand Prix, key for 2 reasons for Marc Marquez and Ducati. Not only to try and find some extra performance from their bike, but also for Marc Marquez to get himself closer to peak physical condition. And we're going to hear from Marc Marquez later in the show. We'll also hear very soon from this man, Marco Bezzecchi. And stick with us, because at 4 o'clock local time, in just under half an hour, the official pre-event press conference with last year's winner, Alex Marquez, Red Bull KTM Factory Racing's Pedro Acosta, and the man second in the World Championship, Jorge Martin. So make sure you stick around for that one. But firstly, let's focus on the man leading the World Championship. Despite the facts that we've just given, the dominance that he's had in Sunday's Grand Prix, that World Championship lead is only 4 points. You do feel as though it should be bigger given what he's been achieving on a Sunday. And we come to a venue here where Marco Bezzecchi hasn't got the greatest form. You look at the form book, and this isn't a place where we've seen the very best of Bez. So this feels like a huge challenge for him this weekend. It's one where I think we've been saying this for a number of weeks, but if he was able to go out and perform at the same level as he has done for the previous 3 Sundays, and I think that would be a real marker, and at a point where we say, OK, Bez is without doubt the clear championship favourite. How do you see Marco Bezzecchi coming into this weekend? Yeah, just the one podium here in MotoGP a couple of years ago. It's difficult to know really how much we can take into GP form at the certain venues we go to with Aprilia, with Marco Bezzecchi, because they're strong everywhere we go at the moment, aren't they? We've been to 3 very, very different venues so far in 2026, which are thrown at different conditions, different track layouts. We've had bumpy circuits, we have fast circuits, relatively slow circuits, we've had flowing circuits, stop and go circuits. Marco Bezzecchi and Aprilia have won at all of them. So there's clearly a bike and a rider combination there that are strong anywhere we go. But I guess the question ultimately this weekend is whether Aprilia can fend off what is sure to be a challenge from Ducati. Ducati aren't going to be this week, nor is Marc Marquez for the entirety of the season. And Marco, when he spoke in his media scrum earlier on, we'll hear from him when he spoke to our colleagues in the broadcaster earlier, he said that Aprilia, they can't afford to just sit on the current performance level that they've got. They know they've got to inject more performance into Aprilia to fend off Ducati, who surely aren't going to take this poor start to the season lying down. So often it's said that the championship starts when we get back to Europe, but Marc Marquez, who again we'll hear from as we said, pointed out that the championship started in Thailand. Yeah, they're all worth the same points. We've had 3 races, as you say, in different conditions, different circuits, different challenges, and so far Aprilia and Marco Bezzecchi have been the clear favourites. But what sort of a statement do you think it would be for Bez to go out and to pull off 4 straight victories to start the season? And what kind of a mood do you think he's in? Because I'll allow you to pull out the brilliant stat that you did on our drive down from Sevilla yesterday, but it's been a couple of occasions before where someone has won the opening 3 Grand Prix of a World Championship season, and more often than not it ends quite positively. Yes, so in the 77-year history of this great World Championship, 17 times it's happened. This is the 17th occasion that a rider has won the first 3 Grand Prix of the season. 10 different riders have done it, because a few of them have done it more than once. only once in the history of the MotoGP World Championship has that rider failed to win the championship. That was when Mick Doohan broke his leg in 1992, when he surely would have won that year's World Championship. He only lost it by a couple of points despite missing a chunk of the season. So that tells you two things. First of all, the points advantage you get from that is very difficult to pull back. Of course, the sprint mistakes that Marco Bezzecchi has made so far this season do counter that. But it also generally means that a bike advantage that sees you win the first 3 Grand Prix of the season is generally baked in for much of the season. Now, of course, we're not talking about Ducati at the peak of their powers, nor are we talking about Marc Marquez at the peak of their powers. But there is no question that Aprilia is the reference bike, and Marco Bezzecchi is riding at a level that he hasn't so far in MotoGP. I think a bigger statement for Marco Bezzecchi this weekend wouldn't be just winning on Sunday. It would be putting the perfect weekend together, because you can't say he's done that any of the first 3 Grand Prix so far. As much as he's dominated and led every lap on Sundays, he's not stood on a Saturday podium yet.
No, in fact, in his MotoGP career, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember him ever doing the double, a sprint victory, and then doing it on Sunday. And when he's had the dominance he had over the past 5 Grand Prix, going into the penultimate 2 rounds of last year, you do feel as though he probably should have done that. It's obvious, as you say, not only us, to everyone, and I'm sure to Bez and his crew as well, that Saturday is the day, certainly in that sprint, where he has to start converting his pace, his rhythm, his form into points, into results. Right, let's hear from the World Championship leader then, Marco Bezzecchi. How is he feeling ahead of the Spanish Grand Prix? That World Championship lead, only 4 points, so he needs to make sure he continues that golden run here this weekend.
As championship leader coming into Europe, and you've led every Grand Prix lap so far this year, you've won every Grand Prix that we've had. How are you feeling coming back into Europe?
I feel good. I feel happy to be back in Europe, especially here in Jerez. That is a wonderful place, a wonderful track, so very, very happy overall. Can't wait to ride the bike that is even better.
Aprilia have never won here at Jerez, but you're in amazing form, both the manufacturer, but more so you. So what kind of weekend can we expect here? Is it going to reset a little bit, or can we expect that Aprilia continue that form that they've started 2026 with?
Well, of course, we hope. We all hope from the box and from the factory in Noale. But as you said, is like a new beginning. We had a decent break. Everyone had the time to work on every aspect. So the riders and also the manufacturers. So will be a tough weekend. We will try our best to start in the best way possible.
And we've had 3 very different GPs so far this year, Thailand, Brazil, and obviously at Kota. We've seen that you've won them all, as we said, but there's always been another Aprilia on the podium. Is the Aprilia the best bike on the grid right now?
I have no idea. I mean, it's difficult for me to compare with the other bikes, so I ride only the Aprilia, so I don't know. For me, for myself, for sure, my team, my part of the garage is very good, and I feel wonderful with them. But it's a question that I have no idea how to answer.
And on the other side of the garage as well, Jorge is right behind you in the championship. Can we expect an all Aprilia battle at the front this weekend, or Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez, who won here last year? Do you think the brothers are going to catch up a little bit this weekend?
Well, Marc and Alex for sure, but all the others are super strong, because also Dija, Pecco, and everyone is Pedro is super competitive. So here is a track that the gaps between the riders are always super small, and the races are always super tough, because you have to manage a lot the tires. So will be tough. Will be a tough weekend. Hopefully we can have a good race together with my bike, but we will see.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Perfect. That is all.
Marco Bezzecchi there speaking to Kiko Giles, and we focus on Jorge Martin, his teammate, because you feel as though at the moment he is someone that I think a lot of us have got our eyes on this weekend. Of course, if you join us for the first time this weekend, Jorge Martin missed the opening test of the year in Malaysia, 3 days of running there. But despite that lost track time, despite everything he went through last year in the amount of track time he lost, it's now 4 straight podium finishes for him, only 4 points behind Marco Bezzecchi's teammate in the World Championship. He is someone that we all expect has been able to take huge benefit from this slightly longer gap than normal, and is someone that we all anticipate is just going to grow and grow and grow as we go throughout the season. This feels like a weekend where Jorge Martin could really announce himself in front of his home crowd.
Yeah, of course, so much of the talk from a home point of view is about the Marquez brothers, but we shouldn't forget Jorge Martin in all of that. You're absolutely right. We're expecting him just to get stronger and stronger and stronger as the year goes on. We've got some circuits coming up over the next month or two that Jorge Martin will definitely feel favour him. Le Mans, a very good example of that. Ballerton Park last year, he was also super strong. And when we talked about Marco Bezzecchi earlier and saying that he hasn't really maximised his points return from any weekend so far, I think we can say that Jorge Martin most certainly has so far, given there's still the physical limitations that he's suffering from. He said on the eve of the Austin weekend, I am far from 100% fit, and we believe him, given that what he's been through over the last year and a half. To then go and win the sprint in the manner that he did was exceptional, and he wasn't exactly chasing Marco Bezzecchi home, but he kept him very much in sight in Austin, Texas too. So Jorge, I think, will be sitting pretty, and I think in terms of the Aprilia dynamic, I think Jorge will almost feel that the pressure isn't really on him this season because Marco's finished last year so strong, because Marco is leading the championship and has won the first two Grand Prix. Many will view Aprilia's lead challenger and Aprilia's championship challenge as resting on the shoulders of Marco Bezzecchi, and Jorge Martin can almost just play with house money and ride with no pressure.
Absolutely, and you feel as though as we go throughout the season, one of the key factors that I think a lot of people are already speaking about is that the three men that we anticipate are going to be in this World Championship fight right to the bitter end are going to be Marco Bezzecchi, Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez. Two of those three have been there, done it before. This is uncharted territory. I know we're only at round 4 and it's going to have a bigger impact when we get into the real crunch moments later in the year, but Bez never fought for a World Championship in MotoGP, whereas Jorge Martin has got it over the line, not only in MotoGP, but has been through the trials and tribulations of it. And you feel as though that could really stand him in good stead if the Aprilia are able to once again exert their dominance this weekend and it ends up becoming a duel between the two Aprilia riders. That experience could be key.
And Jorge Martin won his World Championship. First of all, he won it by being outstanding, but he won it largely in 2024 by being consistent, by banking the solid points, winning a lot of sprints, of course. He only won the 3 Grand Prix that year, but he was constantly there or thereabouts, picking up the points, which is exactly what he's done so far this season. So he's almost following the 2024 blueprint so far. It's Jorge Martin. Now, that alone won't win him World Championship. He's going to have to try and unlock the kind of speed and performance that Marco has shown so far, but surely with more and more laps on the bike, you'd expect that to come for Jorge Martin. And as I say, I think he'll view this as a bit of a low pressure scenario for him. There's of course so much talk, so much expectation that he won't be part of that Aprilia team next season. So again, maybe that will release a little bit of pressure off his shoulders. Again, maybe Aprilia will be looking at Marco Bezzecchi and saying, we could really do with you being our world champion next year. They will not favour one rider over the other. We're not suggesting that. But of course, they'll want a number 1 on the front of their RSGP next season. I
mean, surely for the second time in 2 years, he's not going to take the
it
number 1
elsewhere. Martin, wouldn't it?
What an unbelievable story that would be. But of course, we're at round 4. It's April. We're getting carried away ever so slightly. Right, let's touch on the number 93, the reigning world champion, Marc Marquez. We'll talk about him in a second. But first, let's hear from the man himself, for him to answer the big question, I'm sure, that many of his fans have had over the last few weeks. How close to 100% is the world champion? Is he going to be back to his best here at Jerez? Let's hear from him and find out.
Mark, obviously 3 weekends at home and an important one for you, I guess, both physically and mentally. So arriving here at your home Grand Prix, how 100% fit do you feel, both off track and of course riding as well?
I mean, of course, were important these 3 weeks at home because trying to work in my weak points. The first 3 races were not easy, especially to survive during all weekend in a good way. But yeah, let's see if now what we did at home is working here in the MotoGP bike. That is the most important. But yeah, I can say that I'm in a good about physical side. I'm in a good level to perform in the best way possible.
How difficult were the first 3 races? We could see both off track and on track. It wasn't the same. Marc Marquez, just run us through how difficult it was both mentally and physically on the bike the first 3 races of the season.
Yeah, as you say, first 3 races were difficult, inside and upside of track. Inside, especially because I was suffering to find the way to ride in a good way. I mean, I was fast in some areas of the race, in some laps, but not in a constant way. We know the reason. We are trying to work on it. And upside of track was difficult because survive with a painful is never easy to arrive here and just try to fake in your face. It's impossible.
And in terms of your shoulder, of course, and obviously the crash in Austin as well, physically, how are you feeling? 100%? Do you feel just below 100% before you head on the bike?
No, I feel right now. Always I try to find my numbers in the gym, and I can say that now I'm in a good level to perform in a good way in the race track. It's true that it's not that I'm not performing in a good way the first 3 races, but I didn't put this extra that a good rider need to put on a manufacturer. You know, when a manufacturer takes you, they are waiting that extra from you, and yeah, is what we will try to do the next races. Try to be better and better, and yeah, try to improve, because especially Marco Bezzecchi with Aprilia are riding in a very good way.
As you say, Marco and Aprilia are at the top of the championship. How important is this European leg of the season, especially here in Jerez, where everyone knows the circuit like the back of their hand? How much are we and yourselves going to learn about Ducati and your performance compared to Aprilia this weekend?
I mean, for me, the people that are saying, no, we need to wait to Jerez because we are going at 3 different tracks with 3 different layouts, 3 different rear tires. The winner was the same one. And in the end, the fact is the fact. Aprilia, especially with Marco, are the clear favorites ones. And what we need to do is try to work step by step and try to be closer to them. Because even with a disaster first 3 races, we are not very far in the championship. So let's see step by step if we can increase our level.
I think it's fair to say, if you are a Marc Marquez fan, then that interview should give you a lot of confidence, a lot of optimism coming into the weekend. Not only did he say that physically he's back to a level where he feels he can fight, as some very happy fans over our right-hand shoulder celebrate the fact that I think they've just got Marc Marquez's signature. That is how you should celebrate a signature. They're absolutely over the moon. But the fact that he described, I think, as we touched on after the flag, after both Brazil and Austin, he said there, after a disastrous opening 3 rounds, we're only 36 points adrift, which means he's still in the fight. That is 1 weekend's worth of points, basically. A sprint win 12, Grand Prix win 25. So if things can go to his way this weekend, he could leave Jerez as World Championship leader still. It feels as though this weekend, hugely, hugely important for Marc Marquez to really illustrate not only to himself but to the team, and I think in particular to his rivals and Marco Bezzecchi, that he's here to fight in 2026, and he has not given up on this World Championship, even despite the issues he's had in the opening 3 rounds.
Yeah, I posed the question, I think it was during after the flag in Austin, about the problems that Marc Marquez and Ducati as a collective have had so far this season. How much would a fully fit Marc Marquez fix those? I don't think it'll fix everything for Ducati, because clearly this bike has areas it needs to improve upon. But Marc Marquez can make a heck of a lot of the difference up by being 100% fit. I think we'll get our answer 2 or 3 laps into the Grand Prix on Sunday as to just how fit Marc Marquez is, because we've already seen him qualify towards the front. We've already seen him win a sprint this season. That's not really the problem, but it's on a full tank at the start of Grand Prix. He says the bike's aggressive, it's nervous, and he can't fully wrestle it around a circuit with his physical condition. So if he can do that, we've seen already in the first 2 Grand Prix, his pace in the second half of races hasn't been bad at all. It's been similar to the Aprilias, certainly competitive up against the Aprilias so far this year. But of course, by the time he's found that level of performance, he's too far back. He's 4th, 5th, 6th on the road, and he's several seconds off the race leader. So from Ducati's point of view, and from Marc's point of view, he'll be saying, if I've got a bike that I can stay in the race in the early stages, I can then do the rest in the second half of the Grand Prix. So it's going to be super, super fascinating this weekend. Because what we've seen in previous years with Marc Marquez, what we certainly saw last year with Marc Marquez, he was able to win races with a little bit of margin. He was able to win them relatively comfortably. Not convinced at all, even if he can win this weekend, he's got the performance to win with margin. He's going to have to take those risks, which he hasn't felt confident taking. So if we do see Marc Marquez with his right shoulder down, we do see Marc Marquez really going all in this weekend, we can certainly take from that he's confident in his body.
Absolutely, and you feel as though, from what he's shown so far, that I think people have been pretty hasty, pretty quick to write off his chances this year. I mean, you look at the form book and it would suggest that he should have really had a double podium in Thailand if it wasn't for that freak incident in the Grand Prix. The crash, as he admitted to the press on Friday in Austin, has really taken a lot more out of him than he wanted to admit over the course of the weekend. He showed us the state of
his arm earlier on. His right arm's a mess.
Still a month on, and he's got a huge scar on that right arm there. It was a big, fast crash, and that really hampered his chances in Austin. So an extra month to put some real power and some real strength now and mobility into that shoulder, and I think we are going to see what Marc Marquez is capable of doing this weekend. The thing that I think is going to be most interesting is how Aprilia respond and how Marco Bezzecchi in particular responds, because I say this with the greatest respect, but the streak that he's been on so far, he's won without too much pressure. The 2 races at the end of last year, the championship was done. The 3 races at the start of this year, we haven't got that championship narrative really starting to build.
There was one situation so far this year where Marc Marquez put Bez under genuine pressure. That was the sprint in Buriram, and we know what happened there.
Exactly. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Bez is able to handle and withstand what we anticipate will be, with the crowd on his side as well.
He won't be getting many cheers here.
No, it'll be a big Marc Marquez onslaught this weekend, and you feel as though it will do his World Championship hopes and Ducati's hopes the world of good. Quite remarkably, it's now 8 Grand Prix without the factory Ducati team standing on a MotoGP podium, which is
since Bezzecchi last year.
A huge podiumless streak. In fact, the longest streak going back to 2013, 2014, I believe. So these boys aren't used to not celebrating in some form on Sunday, and I think we'd both be flabbergasted if we don't see 1 red bike on there, potentially even 2, because we can move from Marc Marquez onto Pecco Bagnaia. He proved over the weekend in Austin, given what he was able to do on Saturday, that the pace is there, but that result on Sunday was as shocking as anybody up and down the field, the way in which he dropped in those closing moments.
3 times the winner here, Pecco Bagnaia, 22, 23, 24, of course, when he beat Marc Marquez in that brilliant head-to-head when he was the rider with the crowd against him, as Marc Marquez was trying to claim victory in front of his home crowd. It's an interesting one with Ducati, because I think you can throw Fabio Di Giannantonio into this mix as well, where they kind of have opposite problems at the moment, don't they? From Marc to the pair of Italians, where Marc Marquez isn't strong enough in the early stages of a race, he's then pretty good on one tyre towards the end, whereas we got a graphic demonstration with both Pecco and Digia, more so with Pecco in Austin, where Pecco Bagnaia felt he thought he was saving tyre and being cautious and keeping some rubber for the second half of the race, but when we got to sort of half distance, his tyre was finished, and he had nothing to really fight with in the second half of the race. So Ducati are in a bit of a sort of halfway house here, where they're trying to keep their riders happy, trying to find a bike that suits everyone. At the moment, it's suiting no one.
Yeah, no, it's a precarious position. When we said in Austin on Sunday evening that the huge litmus test was going to be the test on Monday, MotoGP, all teams and riders will be testing on Monday, an opportunity for Ducati to try and find those gains. Right, in the final 10 minutes, let's cover off some of the other news, some of the other key items coming into this weekend. The first big one, Alex Rins confirming to us today that he won't be at Yamaha next year. The Spaniard telling us that he has been told no room at the inn for 2027, with the hot rumour suggesting that, quite a surprise pick, Yamaha have signed up Ai Agura to move from the Trackhouse squad to the factory Yamaha squad for 2027. That's one that caught a lot of us out, but seems as though a smart move. Ai Agura desperately unlucky not to have got that first MotoGP podium last time out, and you feel as though the way he's riding, it's not too far away.
Yeah, I just about got over the sadness of Ai Agura missing that podium until you brought it up again on the show. Yeah, he was so unlucky in Austin, Texas. He clearly, I guess, like so many, but I guess you ask any rider up and down this grid, would you rather be a factory rider or would you rather be an independent rider, although that's not really officially a term in MotoGP anymore. They'd rather be a factory rider because of not only the pay packet that comes with that, but ultimately you get the best of the parts, particularly when we're going into a new era of technical regulations where you'd expect the factory teams to have a bit of an advantage over their customer outfits. So, yeah, first of all, for Alex Rins, it's going to be sad to lose him from MotoGP next season, if that's what we expect. Certainly we're going to lose him from Yamaha. It's going to be difficult at this stage. As he's kind of said himself, he's not really got the equipment, really, to demonstrate what he can still do in MotoGP. One of the most naturally talented riders we've seen for a long time in MotoGP. You just look at the nature of so many of his wins to look at how good Alex Rins is. but we're starting to see signs now in this second season of just what a class MotoGP rider Ayagura can be. That podium is a case of when rather than if for
Yeah.
We're going to see him on a podium in the very near future, and it would appear, if you believe the reports, that those talents will be heading across to Yamaha next year.
Potentially could be a big weekend for Ayagura. He's had a lot of success here in the junior categories, victories in both Moto3 and Moto2, so he's one that I think we should definitely be watching out for this weekend. When it comes to Honda, we should cover off the fact that Aleix Espargaro, test rider, had, speaking of Mr. Ayagura, nearly popping into shot there, we could have grabbed him for a quick chat. Anyway, Aleix Espargaro, we want to send our thoughts to him and wish him a speedy recovery. A big crash for the Spaniard whilst testing out in Sepang, as Honda did further development on their 850. Since we last with you as well, Ducati have had their 850 out on track for the very first time as preparations start to ramp up for 2027. And we should touch on Honda and their chances this weekend. A lot of rumours as well starting to gather momentum that maybe they'll have 6 bikes on the grid next year. I'm sure we'll cover that over the course of the weekend. I'm hoping to grab a word with Gunter Steiner on those negotiations to see how close he is from switching from KTM to Honda. But on Diogo Moreira's birthday, we should touch on Honda. What are their chances, do you think, this weekend? For Joan Mir, it's been, a torrid start to the season. The number of crashes, the number of non-point scoring finishes really starting to tally up. First and foremost, he needs to see the checkered flag. But I guess you could look at the silver lining that he has illustrated that there is some performance in that Honda.
Yeah, there's an old saying, isn't there, in motorsport, where you'd rather have a fast rider who crashes too much than a slow rider who doesn't crash, because it's much easier to stop a fast rider from crashing. But Joan Mir is taking that to an extreme at the moment with the amount of mistakes he's making. It's 5 in a row, not 5 DNFs, because he did pick the bike up and remount and finish the sprint in Austin with what would have been a podium in the end had he not fallen off. He wasn't to know at the time that Pedro Acosta was going to get a tyre pressure penalty. So there is clear potential, but I guess Honda are in that sort of second group behind Aprilia and Ducati, and probably Pedro Acosta, who's been able to elevate himself above the other KTMs, of which there are only 3 this weekend, as we'll come on to in a moment. So I think Honda will be looking at getting 1 or 2 bikes into Q2 at the end of Friday. And I think if they can get a bike home in the top 6, which I think is genuinely possible for them, their race pace is good. If they can get a bike home in the top 6 on Sunday, I think they would consider that something of a success.
You mentioned Pedro Acosta there. We will close out this chat by touching on him and KTM. You mentioned 3 riders, unfortunately, after that surgery on his shoulder to remove the screw that had come loose. This one just coming a little bit too soon for Maverick Viñales, but the Spaniard is anticipated to return to Le Mans for the French Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time. Pedro Acosta is going to be front and centre in our press conference coming up, and we keep asking the question, when is that victory going to come? But you do feel, with the way he's riding at the moment, we said after Austin, arguably as good as anybody in the World Championship right now, what he's able to extract out of that KTM, for me, is on a par with what we're seeing from Marco Bezzecchi. Is this the weekend, Lewis? For the Pedro Acosta fans at home, of which there are going to be thousands of them in the grandstand this weekend, is this the weekend he can do it?
To all those Pedro Acosta fans watching and listening, maybe put your finger in your ears for the next 30 seconds or so, because I don't think it's going to be. And that's not for the lack of trying from Pedro Acosta's point of view. I totally agree with you. He has been the rider of the season so far. Yes, we're only 3 Grand Prix in, but I don't think anybody has maximised the performance of their bike and maximised what's available to them quite like Pedro has so far this season. So for sure, he's going to be in there somewhere. It's clear that KTM have made a step forward. Pedro Acosta is exemplifying that with his performances on track, but it still feels as if Aprilia, and if Ducati do make that step forward with Marc Marquez close to full fitness, it still appears as if KTM have the 3rd fastest bike.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd have to agree with that. But one thing is for certain, it is all boiling down to be a magnificent weekend here in Jerez. I mean, first and foremost, when does Jerez ever disappoint?
Never.
Year in, year out, we get the atmosphere, we get the crowd, and we get the action as well. We've had some classics down the years, and I've just got a sneaky feeling we're going to be in for another one this weekend. The bounce back of Marc Marquez surely is on the cards as Marco Bezzecchi tries to extend out his championship lead. But what about these 3 men trying to chase down the Italian at the top of the championship? What can they do? Last year's winner, Alex Marquez, the man sat 2nd in the championship, Jorge Martin, and the Shark gunning for that debut Premier Class victory, Pedro Acosta. All 3 Spaniards preview this, the Spanish Grand Prix. They are, as ever, alongside our very own Matt Burt.